While the PlayStation 4 has had a massive library of exclusives, some of those exclusives failed to live up to gamers' expectations. In this video, we want to take a look at 8 PlayStation 4 exclusives that disappointed gamers. Now, these games aren't necessarily bad, we'll talk about each one of them in depth, but all of these games had expectations at a certain level from gamers and they failed to reach those heights. They still might be good games, but gamers were just expecting more. With that being said, let's get right into this. Killzone Shadowfall. The PlayStation 4's launch in 2013 had a lot of hype surrounding it, and a big reason for that was because they had a marquee launch exclusive in Killzone Shadowfall. Killzone was one of the premier franchises on the PlayStation 3, and it really raised the technical bar for consoles. Killzone 2 was an amazing game, even though that initial trailer was a bit misleading, and Killzone 3 was also a great game, and Killzone Shadowfall would showcase the PlayStation 4's technical power, and it for sure did that. Killzone Shadowfall is an absolutely beautiful game, and it's among the best looking PlayStation 4 games to this day. However, games are not just tech demos, and Killzone Shadowfall failed in areas where Killzone 2 and 3 shine. The single player, while it was a change of premise, wasn't all too engaging, and while the multiplayer fun initially doesn't have a lot of depth to it. There's gameplay nuances that were changed that weren't looked fondly upon, and Killzone Shadowfall, while it is an okay game, given the quality of Killzone 2 and Killzone 3 and Guerrilla Games as a studio, you expected more, but Guerrilla definitely shined with their release of Horizon Zero Dawn, so that's not all too bad. Shadowfall just kind of fell to the wayside.
We have nothing but a wall to separate us from this evil. It is only a matter of time. They will attack again.
This is what you do?
I came here to destroy this.
Don't lie to me. You came here to bury the truth.
Your beliefs!
The Order 1886. Speaking of games raising the technical bar, The Order 1886 can definitely be seen as one. Developed by Ready at Dawn Studios, this was their first forte in a true AAA experience. They did a lot of portable titles such as Daxter, God of War Chains of Olympus, God of War Ghosts of Sparta, but The Order 1886 was their first truly big project. And visually, just like Killzone Shadowfall, the game is absolutely stunning, but once you step away from the visuals and analyze the game itself, there are a lot of issues, probably the most notable being the game's length. This is a very short game and you can complete it in around 3 to 4 hours. The story, while interesting at first, you don't get a lot of clarity to it and the gameplay is rather repetitive, and overall, this isn't a game you're gonna go back and play multiple times. Considering it's a $60 investment and considering it's only a 3 to 4 hour experience, The Order 1886 really failed to live up to expectations.
Sentinel-3, I need air support. Look out! I will not wish this life on my children.
This one is gonna be a little controversial, Infamous Second Son. Now, I have to preface before talking about Second Son saying that this is a great game. Infamous Second Son is a very well-made game. However, there are clear issues with the game, and when you look at what Sucker Punch did with Infamous and Infamous 2, Second Son just seems to be a step behind those two titles, especially from a storytelling and character development standpoint. Cole McGrath was such an engaging character in Infamous 1 and Infamous 2, and you don't see that same recreation in Infamous Second Son with the main character of Delson. While he is a relatively engaging character, something is just missing on that end. Gameplay-wise, it's good, but a lot of the content gets rather repetitive, and again, as is the case with Shadowfall and Order 1886, Second Son is a technical marvel. It is a great game to look at, obviously better visually than Infamous 1 and 2. However, mechanically, I would have to say that Infamous 1 and 2 are better games. Second Son, still really good, definitely worth a buy. There was just potential for more out of Second Son, and considering that Sucker Punch has put Infamous to the back burner for now, that is a little bit unfortunate, but hopefully the series makes a comeback at some point.
Mark on the world, huh?
Now look, for all we know, we may be able to pass you through their security, because you're not a normal bioterrorist. Seem to be getting the hang of your, new symptoms, right?
Of course, the only down.
Shadow of the Beast. Shadow of the Beast was a remake of the classic Shadow of the Beast title, and so many were looking forward to it. Initially, when looking at the game, it looked to be the best way to do a remake. While keeping the essence of the original title intact, you also modernize it with much better visuals, better gameplay, better music. However, there were a lot of shortcomings with Shadow of the Beast. Again, aesthetically and presentation-wise, the game is really good. It's got bloody combat that looks really good, however, it lacks some sort of soul and its own identity. Shadow of the Beast still offers a lot to like, especially if you're really nostalgic with the game. However, if you take it for a brand new experience and a purely original game, if you have no ties to the original Shadow of the Beast game, you're just gonna see it for what it is, and that's a mediocre sci-fi action-adventure game. The Last Guardian. This is another one that many may disagree on, but if you are familiar with Team Ico's other games, Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, you know that The Last Guardian isn't up to par with those two games. That's not saying The Last Guardian is a bad game, because Shadow of the Colossus and Ico are phenomenal games, two of the best games ever released on the PlayStation 2, and it was kind of a foregone conclusion that The Last Guardian wasn't going to live up to expectations. It saw many delays. Originally announced back in 2009, the game wouldn't be released until 2016, and it was originally set to be a PlayStation 3 title, but then it was moved over to the PlayStation 4, and we heard for a long time that there was a lot of creative differences, and that development just wasn't moving along quickly, and that's obvious from the 7-year-long development, and that's obvious from all of the delays and how long it took to get this game out. And while there is still a lot of charm to The Last Guardian, the storytelling and the character behaviors, that's all fine and good, and Team Ico does that really well. However, gameplay-wise, it's very frustrating, and some of the puzzles will just have you throwing a controller at a wall, and that's based primarily on the controls. Still, The Last Guardian offers a very artistic experience, but comparatively speaking to Shadow of the Colossus and Ico, it falls very short of that. Knack. The other PlayStation 4 launch exclusive that so many were looking forward to was Knack. Many times we throw out the phrase when talking about video games that it looks like a Pixar movie come to life, but Knack really did look like that. Visually, this game is outstanding, and that seems to be a common pattern with all of these games, especially because at launch, Knack and Killzone Shadowfall, many drew comparisons with Killzone Shadowfall and Knack being great games visually, but lacking in other fundamental aspects. Knack is a far worse game than Killzone Shadowfall, and it's not a very good platformer at all. The story is bad, the gameplay is very mundane, and there is little to no depth in the gameplay either. Many were expecting Knack to develop into a core franchise for Sony, and while Knack did see a sequel in Knack 2, that game didn't fare much better either, and we'll remember Knack as a gigantic disappointment in the PlayStation 4's library.
What are you trying to accomplish, Victor? World conquest?
Nothing so mundane, I assure you.
We won't rest until every human is dead.
Someone could get hurt.
Gran Turismo Sport. Gran Turismo is one of the most iconic franchises in PlayStation history. The lineage of the series goes so far back, dating back to the PlayStation 1 days, so many were excited to finally get the franchise on the PlayStation 4. However, with the release of Gran Turismo 6, Gran Turismo has really been falling off the radar, and comparatively speaking to its Xbox counterpart in Forza, PlayStation gamers might hate to hear it, but it's clear to see which racing game franchise has become the premier racing game to go to. Gran Turismo Sport released late in 2017, and it had a big emphasis on its VR aspect. However, the core game was very lacking. The car and track selection is much smaller when compared to other racing games, and that is just unforgivable. In 2017, when you put out a game like Gran Turismo Sport, it really doesn't matter that you had a VR emphasis or you emphasize other aspects of the game. Content-wise, it needs to be there, and Gran Turismo Sport just wasn't, and given where this franchise was, ever since the long development of Gran Turismo 5, the series has lost a step, and Gran Turismo Sport really shows that. Hopefully, Polyphony Digital can get back on track and release a product that really enamors us and takes us back to why we loved Gran Turismo, but right now, as I mentioned, it's just really fallen short of other racing game franchises such as Forza. And finally, Drawn to Death. Drawn to Death was the latest game coming from David Jaffe, and David Jaffe is very talented. He worked on the first God of War, Twisted Metal, so many were excited to see what Drawn to Death could become, and initially when looking at it, it is a complete breath of fresh air. The stylistic presentation of the game, how it's presented in a storybook, it's a very cool multiplayer game, and it is a free-to-play title, so you really have nothing to lose for trying out the game. However, Drawn to Death is not a very good game. Even though the presentation is great, it really falls short mechanically and the gameplay isn't there. And while that great presentation can keep you hooked for a couple of games, after playing the game for a few hours, you quickly realize the game's shortcomings and that it's not a very good game. Whether it be from the lackluster physics or poor weapons, Drawn to Death has a lot of issues with it, and you would expect better from David Jaffe. However, since it is a free-to-play title, there's still reason to check it out if you're interested.
You get into ranked play with Drawn to Death, you get into core deathmatch and core team deathmatch, and this is really where the rule sets begin to differentiate themselves from other shooters. We wanted defense and offense to matter in Drawn to Death, and with that, every time you die in core deathmatch or team core deathmatch, you or your team will lose 1 or 2 points.
So that wraps up 8 PlayStation 4 exclusives that disappointed gamers. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Do you disagree with us? Are some of these games your favorite PS4 exclusives? We're interested to hear from you guys, so let us know down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.